Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever stopped to think if, like the way we make music now,
Yeah.
is it similar to how we might end up making art or even buildings using AI?
It sounds like a bit of a leap initially, doesn't it?
Yeah, maybe a little odd, but that's the surprising connection we're really diving into today.
We've been looking at some really thought-provoking material, stuff that kind of pushes you to rethink what creativity even means in the first place.
Right.
It looks at how these new tools, these technologies, actually change the act of creating things. And it draws these, well, fascinating links across different fields.
So the mission for us here for this deep dive is trying to understand, okay, what actually happens to human creativity when technology gets, you know, really good, when it can do some of the making part for us.
What's left for us,
Yeah.
for the human.
Exactly.
And like you said, the starting point is maybe unexpected, the world of music, specifically hip hop.
Mm.
If you think back, remember when sampling first really took off? Some traditional musicians, they really struggled with it.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Using bits of other records instead of playing every single note live.
Yeah. The question kept coming up like, is that real music if you're not physically playing an instrument?
Yeah, that sort of purist view. Like if you weren't sweating over scales for 10 years, it wasn't, I don't know, legitimate somehow.
But the material we looked at challenges that. It asks something more basic. What is music fundamentally?
Okay.
Isn't it really about creating patterns, organized sound patterns that, get you emotionally involved?
Makes sense.
And for centuries, sure, the best way, maybe the only way, was mastering instruments. It took years, study, incredible skill.
And tons of practice, physical effort.
Right. But then the source asks, and it's pretty provocative, if you can now get that same result, that emotional impact, those complex sounds, using a synth or a sampler or just a laptop, is using that new tech really some kind of, I don't know, crime against music? Or is it just a new path to the same goal?
That's a great question. And this is where it gets really interesting, I think, because that same question gets applied immediately to other areas.
Like painting, architecture.
Exactly, especially now with AI coming into the picture so strongly. If these new tools drastically expand what's possible in art, shouldn't we be, like, exploring them, maybe even defending them?
Instead of just resisting because it feels different or somehow lesser.
Yeah. It feels counterintuitive if you're used to the old ways, doesn't it?
It does. And there's this related trend the source noticed, something that initially seemed, well, a bit worrying.
What was that?
Seeing a lot of art students today focusing less on mastering, say, traditional painting from a blank canvas and more on becoming curators.
Ah, right. Learning how to assemble shows, put together existing works by other people.
Yeah, learning to arrange and present things in interesting ways.
I can see why that might raise an eyebrow at first. You know, if everyone's just organizing, who's actually, like, making the original stuff.
That was exactly the initial concern. But then comes this kind of aha moment, circling right back to hip hop.
Okay.
The realization was sampling is a form of curation. It's taking existing stuff, sounds, beats, voices, and then selecting, arranging, remixing them into something totally new, something creative and often really powerful.
And you just can't argue with the impact, can you? Hip-hop built so much on that idea of curation. It's arguably the biggest music genre globally now.
Absolutely dominant. And there's this one really potent, almost chilling example given
Right.
about an Iranian hip-hop artist. He used samples in his music, which was rebellious, defending women's rights, and he was tragically sentenced to death for it.
Wow.
That shows curated creation isn't just technical fiddling. It can have immense power and, real-world consequences.
That really lands the point.
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Maybe we aren't losing creativity. Maybe the human role is just shifting.
Right. The source uses this great analogy. Maybe this tech shift in art is no more dangerous than, say, modern construction equipment was to architecture. Ah, okay. How so?
Well, think about it. That equipment took away a lot of the pure manual labor, right? The needless sweat and toil, as the source puts it.
Yeah, digging foundations by hand versus using an excavator.
Exactly. And technology in art might do something similar. It removes some of that intense manual effort, potentially freeing up the artist.
Freeing them up. To do what?
To focus more on what might be the essentially human part. Making choices, strategic choices, deciding how to select, combine, arrange materials that are now available super quickly, maybe even generated by the tech.
So the value isn't necessarily in the hours spent physically crafting every single tiny piece from scratch anymore?
maybe not solely. It shifts more towards the vision, the selection, the arrangement, the meaning you impose on the
Remember
material.
what you pick and the why behind putting it together like that.
Precisely. The discernment, the intention that becomes central. Which brings us to a final thought for you, the listener, as we wrap this up. In this changing world, where tech can generate the building blocks, the sounds, images, forms incredibly fast, what then is the most unique, the most valuable part of your creative input?
Is it still mainly about that traditional hands-on skill? Or is it increasingly about the strategic skill of choosing, combining, arranging, curating?
Something to think about.